Hey, it's Adrian here. I'm a full-time teacher of the Alexander Technique, and today we're going to discuss breathing. Not how to breathe correctly, but freely. You don't want to be going around thinking about your breathing. I often say with regards to posture, you don't want to do your posture any more than you want to do your breath. You will be poised, you will be breathed. But sometimes we get some little interference patterns that get in the way. So we're going to do a procedure here, you can call it an exercise if you like, that just resets that, a bit like you turn the computer off and back on to reset a glitch in the computer. We're going to do something similar for our breathing. Now, what we're going to basically do is nice long out breaths. And there's a reason for it. The first of which is nice long out breaths encourage your parasympathetic nervous system. That's basically your resting or vegetative state. It quietens the nervous system down, which is a nice benefit in its own right. It's a nice stress release to do that. It also releases the diaphragm, because the diaphragm is another muscle that, like any other, can stay a bit tense and tight, which means I've realised my hands are probably off camera, so I'm going to stand up a bit. But it's here, that's the diaphragm, and it pulls down to create volume and then releases back up. But it sometimes doesn't release all the way back up, it just stays a bit slightly pulled. Now, the nice thing about the out breath is the diaphragm isn't used, so it allows it to release back up nicely. And finally, it allows the rib cage to get a nice bit of movement, so we can free up the rib cage. So basically trying to free up all that mechanism, the breathing mechanism. Now, we do it in a very specific way. What we do is we breathe out all the air we can, and don't worry, your lungs don't collapse. You can't actually breathe out even 50% of your full lung capacity. You know, the lungs don't literally collapse as you breathe out. There's always air in there. And for a while, there's still gaseous exchange happening, more oxygen still getting into the blood, so there's plenty of time with that breath held out. So you do a nice long out breath, you pause for a second or two, and then release. Now, when I say release, it takes effort to hold the air out. So you don't need to actively breathe in. You'll find that the ribcage will want to ping back out. That will create volume, and that will bring air back in. So you'll find yourself being breathed back in when you release the effort it takes to keep the air out. Then what you want to do is simply observe being breathed in, and don't second guess when the in-breath will turn itself around into an out-breath. You don't know when that's going to be, don't second guess, just observe it happening to you, for you. And once you found yourself being breathed out again, join in by extending the breath all the way back out again, and repeat. Now, it's nice to do this with your hands on your rib cage so you can feel whether your rib cage is nicely springing back out. It's just feedback for yourself. So once you get used to this, you don't have to keep having your hands on your rib cage. But it's certainly nice the first few times you try this to see if you're getting any benefit from the rib cage release. And if you're not, it might be an indication that you want to do this quite a bit more until you are getting some release of the rib cage. So I'm going to stand up a bit again, so my hands are on camera. Do it with the thumbs forward, hands on the lower rib cage here. I just say thumbs forward because it encourages a little more width across the front, which is nice. Now, this is kind of hard for me to talk about while I demonstrate. So, for example, when at the end of my breath, I've basically got no air left to say something like release, to release the effort of holding the breath out. I'll try, we'll see what happens, just so you've got some indication of when I'm doing things. Also, for now, I don't really mind if you do it through the nose or through the mouth. I'll discuss more about that afterwards. I'll add some more detail after. I'll do it through the mouth for no other reason, because you can see if my mouth is open or closed. I'll breathe out through my mouth, then close my mouth, and let it come through my nose. But for now, if you want, you can just do it through your nose, which has an advantage that it means you can cheekily do this once you're used to doing this at any time in public, and no one needs to know. So you can give yourself a little de-stress by kicking in the parasympathetic nervous system, and get yourself nicely aerated while you do it. Nice little reset while you're just waiting for a bus or whatever, waiting for the kettle to boil. But for now, I'll do it through my mouth and then back through my nose. So, and don't prepare either. You don't have to take an in-breath in advance, just wherever you are in your breath cycle. So here we go. And release. Breath turning around. Join in. Release. And basically rinse and repeat. It's really that simple. So as you release the breath, hopefully you'll feel the rib cage, fill your hands nicely, nice springiness so that it springs back out into your hands, hopefully. Now, you can start this just by doing it through the nose, as I suggested. There's a physiological aspect to this that actually if you do it through the mouth, it does kick in the parasympathetic nervous system a bit more. I mean, I'm sure it does it enough anyway, but it's just that little extra. And it does release any tension, helps release tension in the throat. So what you can do, I know first time I think I went, just to be visual on camera really. But if you just open your mouth gently and have a sense of think of a warm column of air coming out. It helps to, for some reason that idea of a warm column there helps to open up the back of the throat and the nasal passages. And just open it all up and release it. So you could do something like this. So at the end, close your mouth and then let the air come in through the nose. Now, any of you who are familiar with the Alexander technique already will obviously be recognizing something there. We're halfway there to what Alexander called a whispered R. Now, I'm not going to go into the full whispered R for now because I want this to be more about breathing. Now, Alexander said the whispered R was really a speech exercise or procedure, a vocal procedure, rather than a breathing one. Interestingly, before Alexander became known for the Alexander technique and he developed his work that way, he was previously known as the breathing man. So if the cap fits, wear it. I'm quite happy to distill these elements of the whispered R, simplify them slightly, and use them as a breathing exercise. So that's really all there is to it. There's a couple of things, well, there's one thing I'm thinking of you can do as an addition. At the end of the out breath, instead of just pausing for a second or two, you could pause for an indefinite period of time. Now, there's a part of your brain that monitors oxygen levels in your blood. And when it gets too low, you'll instinctively know. It will just be quite instinctive. You'll go, it's time for a breath to come back in. So wait for an indefinite period of time. It may be longer than you think, because there's still gaseous exchange happening in there with the air that's still in your lungs. And the advantage of that is when the time comes that you go, all right, I want breath back in now, and you release, it generates, it's probably going to generate more of a ping in the rib cage. The breathing mechanism is really going to want to get some air in. You don't have to do anything, it'll do you. And you'll find you'll naturally probably end up with a bigger in-breath happening for you to get more air in, to replenish the blood oxygen levels. And that generates more movement in the rib cage. So it's just a nice way to generate some extra movement if you're wanting to do that. I personally don't do it that often anymore. Do it occasionally. But if you really feel like your rib cage is a bit sluggish, it can be a nice way to really get some mechanical movement going there without actually trying to do anything. It does you. Now you can do these procedures, say 3 to 5 times, just 3 to 5 long out breaths and release, and that's just a nice reset. And it doesn't take much of your time. Or if you want, you can spend 5 to 10 minutes doing it, and it's it's a great way to really not only just work on freeing up the breathing mechanism, but it really kicks in the parasympathetic nervous system. It could be a nice thing to do if you're doing Alexander lying down, semi-supine, constructive rest, whatever we wish to call it, to spend 5 or 10 minutes doing. It might seem a bit excessive, but but it generates a lot of movement in the rib cage. But interestingly, because the rib cage articulates with the spine, it actually generates a wave along the spine as you do it. And the longer out breaths really exaggerate that movement in the spine. Now, we're generally not aware of it when we're upright. If you were to do this lying down, you'd feel that movement in the spine, and you can feel yourself being moved through the breath, which is really quite nice. And it's a nice sense of the spine freeing up, being mobile and dynamic, even in lying down. So, if I'm out and about, daily business, I may do 3 to 5 of them. But if I'm doing my classic Alexander lying down, I may spend 5 to 10 minutes doing it. And that will really encourage me to be aware of the movement of my spine, but also to really encourage that nice resting state, a much quieter nervous system, a great way to come off any stress levels that have built up during the day. Okay, so I hope you find that useful. I do teach the Alexander technique online, so if you are interested, do get in touch. I'll leave details in the comments or description. All right, thanks. Take care. Bye.